All right. At the Tennessee Department of Education, we ground our work in our strategic plan, Best for All. The plan focuses on 3 priorities: academics, student readiness, and educators for all Tennessee students. And as you all know, the work you are doing with students in transition is strongly connected to all 3 of these areas. Program purpose. We're going to look at the definitions under McKinney-Vento. We're going to look at the relationship between homelessness and education. We're going to look at McKinney-Vento identification. We're also going to talk about unaccompanied homeless youth, education rights and supports for your programming, effective practices and collaborations, and of course, we'll end with important reminders, resources, and questions. So let's look at the program purpose. The purpose of the Education for Homeless Children and Youth program is to ensure that each homeless child or youth has equal access to the same free, appropriate public education, including a public preschool education as provided to other children and youth. So let's look at the definition and the rights under McKinney-Vento. Under the federal law, the definition of homeless under the McKinney-Vento Act is children or youth who lack a fixed, regular, and adequate nighttime residence. Those are the key words: fixed, regular, and adequate, including children and youth who are sharing the housing of other persons due to loss of housing, economic hardship, or a similar reason, living in motels, hotels, trailer parks, or camping grounds due to lack of alternate adequate accommodations, living in motels, hotels, trailer parks, campgrounds due to lack of alternate adequate accommodations, living in emergency or transitional shelters or in abandoned hospitals, living in public or private places not designed for or ordinarily used as a regular sleeping accommodation, living in cars, parks, public spaces, substandard housing, abandoned buildings, bus or train stations, or similar settings, and who are migratory children living in the above circumstances. So when you consider eligibility, you want to consider 3 things: a child or youth who lives in a situation that is not fixed, regular, and adequate. Again, I'm saying this 3 words: fixed, regular, and adequate. It's considered homeless. Fixed being stationary, permanent, not subject to change. Regular is used on a nightly basis. And adequate is going to be sufficient for meeting the physical, psychological, and safety needs typically met in a home environment. If a child or youth lacks any of these 3 conditions in a living situation, he or she is considered homeless. So to determine eligibility, you want to ask a few qualifying questions. Why did your family or youth move in with another family? Was it because the parent wanted to save some money? Maybe they had free built-in childcare, making this a planned move. So then in that case, it probably would not be eligible for McKinney-Vento services. But if the parent lost their job or they got evicted from their home or were forced to move into a grandparent due to a crisis, maybe a flood or tornado or something like that, and they moved in with the grandparents, then that would probably be McKinney-Vento eligible, as the family did not plan to move in with the grandparent. You also want to look at, is this a long-term arrangement? If it's something like they're moving in to help the grandparent or to help another family with maybe illnesses in the family, maybe they have, again, built-in childcare, then this would not be a McKinney-Vento situation, as it's a planned long-term living arrangement. Again, you want to look at the key factors. Is it a situation that's a mutual benefit, or is it convenience? Or are both parties like wanting to do it so they can, again, out of convenience? Or is this brought on by a crisis, a tornado, a flood, a fire, anything like that that's been brought on for the cause of homelessness? So when you determining eligibility, it's important to remember that a student's living situation is part of the educational record and protected under FERPA. And so when you're gathering this information, you want to ensure that it's done reasonably, unintrusively, and lawfully. It's very important to remember that you should not conduct invasive surveillance of the families by following them, observing them from outside their residence, or talking to the neighbors about their living situation. I know a lot of times LEAs want to really, sometimes families take advantage of McKinney-Vento and they want to claim that they're homeless. And so you want to kind of do a little bit more digging. And while it's allowable to like investigate, you want to make sure that it's not intrusive. If needed, you can have trained staff, such as your homeless liaison, your school counselors, or social workers, to conduct home visits for making the eligibility determination. Of course, you want to make sure that it's not just one home visit. You want to do anywhere from 2 to 3 home visits, so making sure you're documenting that you did try to, that you did visit the home. Relationship between homelessness and education. Let's look at some ways that homelessness can create barriers. Students experiencing homelessness may be unable to meet standard school enrollment requirements. They may have moved around a lot, they have changed schools a lot, they may be hungry, they may be tired and stressed, and so maybe they don't have all their school supplies, or maybe they don't really have a quiet place to study. And so a lot of them will not have access to reliable transportation. Maybe they don't have that parent or guardian that has a car or someone to help get them to school. So while we know that teachers are trained to work with students and educating them, we also want to make sure that your teachers and staff are trained on these identifications and barriers to students, because they're your main point of contact when it comes to providing services for your students and being able to point out if there is some situations going on. And so again, while a lot of LEAs train their front office staff, it's important that we're doing as a best practice that all staff know the barriers to homelessness so that you can get those resources and support to those families. These barriers can impact education. Students experiencing homelessness might be more likely to be chronically absent. They have lower grades. They might have special education needs. They probably are scoring poorly on assessment tests. And of course, they're at higher risk for dropping out. So if you have these teachers who are equipped to understand and recognize these barriers up front, you can probably help with reduce the risk of students dropping out, help get those tutoring services for those who are scoring poorly. And then you have somebody that can really keep an eye on chronically absent children and really be that barrier to help. So here are a few engagement strategies to consider. Again, training your teachers is a first step, a crucial step into really making your McKinney-Vento homeless programming successful and really identifying the students. So you want to provide access to shower, laundry facilities, and you want to make sure you as a homeless liaison know that you have those services, but all your staff may not know that those services are available to your students. And so you need to make sure your teachers, your staff know what services are available to your homeless students. Again, not everyone has shower laundry facilities, but if it is open to your homeless students, make those teachers aware of that. You want to implement policies to assist with accumulating credits towards graduation. Again, a lot of times homeless students are moving in and out, especially your juniors and seniors who need accreditation. So you want to be working with those teachers to make sure that they understand and know about credit accrual for your unaccompanied homeless youth or just your homeless youth in general. You want to become familiar with eligibility criteria for your local social services and housing programs. Again, while your teachers aren't going to know as much about all that information, if they know that there's a homeless program out there, if they know there's a resource for them to like drop a student, hey, like if you go by this center right here, they have food for you, or, you know, just go see the homeless liaison here at our school, then that helps those students know that they have those services. A family member may want to have a quick resource. They may have made that connection with the family member versus maybe the homeless liaison. So you want to look at all those avenues. Again, you want your teachers to be providing flexibility with school assignments, including deadlines and needed supplies. Again, if you have an out-of-class assignment for a homeless student and maybe they don't have access to a computer, access to internet, then you're really setting that student up for failure. And so you want to make sure those teachers understand that while we understand that you have to do assignments and schoolwork, you got to make sure that what you are expecting of the students is something that can happen. And then, of course, you want to be familiar with state laws and, of course, your minor medical consent for your students. Let's see here. I think I jumped ahead. So let's look at identification. So under the McKinney-Vento Act, every LEA must designate an appropriate staff person to serve as a local homeless education liaison. It's important that all staff know who this person is. Again, it doesn't have to be just your front office staff that know. Everyone in the school building should know who the homeless liaison is for the LEA. And that's super important because if a teacher does not know that the homeless liaison for the LEA, who that person is, they may have to go to the principal, who then will have to go to the homeless liaison. That's that middleman that could be eliminated and go straight to the homeless liaison to go ahead and get those services and support started immediately. And every school may have a specific homeless liaison at the school level. So as long as the staff know that the homeless liaison at the school level is, and then if there is someone who that homeless person reports to for the LEA, then that is also allowable. But as long as your staff know who your homeless liaison is and their point of contact, it's very important when identifying and supporting your homeless programming. So to be able to identify students experiencing homelessness, it's important to understand the definition of homeless. So we're going to go back to identification as the first step to connecting students, of course, in homeless situations. And we want to go back to, again, you want your staff to know. You want them to be able to support what you're doing for your homeless program. You want them to know about the information and resources and supports that are available to them academically, educationally. So again, all staff, regardless of the roles, I can't say that enough. A lot of times when we're out and about in the field, a lot of homeless liaisons will say, oh, well, our front office staff, we're such a small school, our front office staff know the enrollment policy, they know this. But it's really important that you go beyond that. And at the best practice, you really have your bus drivers trained. You have your cafeteria workers trained. Your teachers are going to be the ones that are working with your students every day and may notice signs of a child being
Hey, Vanessa, I don't want to interrupt, but the screen that we're seeing says Washington County Schools. We're not seeing your PowerPoint at all anymore.
Oh. Okay. Are we back? I thought it looked funny, but
yeah, that's better.
Yeah, we're back now.
Thanks, y'all. So again, you want your front office staff, along with your teachers and all your staff, to be able to identify your homeless students. And so while I know that a lot of you say, again, you train your front office staff for, immediate enrollment, and that's great. That's what you're supposed to be doing. But you want to go a little bit above and beyond, and you want to do a best practice of really educating your staff throughout the school about your identification of homeless students. Again, that teacher or that cafeteria worker or that janitor may have made that connection with that homeless student that maybe you as a homeless liaison haven't made because you're not every day with that student. And so it's important that those people also have those resources. So what are some ways that you can ensure that homeless situations are identified? You should be providing targeted outreach and gathering activities. And so what does that look like? It's the best practice, again, to include a housing questionnaire or a nighttime residency questionnaire in the LEA's enrollment packet so that you can screen for possible McKinney-Vento eligibility. You can find those for who are not aware. You can find those in ePlan and TDO resources, as well as the National Center for Homeless Education. Michelle, do you have a question?
No, I just raised my hand to let you know about the PowerPoint. I'll go ahead and lower my hand. Sorry about that.
You want to make sure you're doing targeted outreach to your unaccompanied homeless youth into like those families by placing those homeless rights posters in places where family and unaccompanied youth can see them. Again, the more they can see the information out there that there is transportation available or that there's services available for these homeless students, the more they'll probably feel comfortable about reaching out about their situations. There's places for your posters, grocery stores, shelters, libraries, YMCAs, churches. Again, if you have posters up there that don't have contact information, it might be a little bit of a moot point. So you need to make sure that your posters, I can't say it enough, have your local homeless liaison contact name and phone number, as well as the state coordinator, which is myself, and my phone number, so that those families and students can reach out to you. Again, when we're doing monitoring throughout the LEAs, there's still LEAs who don't have contact information on their posters, and that's a very important piece that is also federally required. You also want to make sure that you're putting your McKinney-Vento information in your student handbooks, on your LEA website, in brochures. A lot of times when we're doing going through the monitoring and looking at LEA websites, we can find very little pieces about homeless information. And it's the best practice to have your homeless liaison resources for those families, NCHE's information on there, resources within the community. Again, that's an easy first step so that parents know what's available to them and what services they're entitled to with the McKinney-Vento Act. Questionnaire. LEA should be given the questionnaire to every student every year, not just the new students enrolling. So under the federal law, the McKinney-Vento status should be re-verified at the start of every academic year. So a lot of times schools just do the initial enrollment, and then each year they just do a re-enrollment, but they don't do an identification or re-verification. So it is very important that every year every student gets a housing questionnaire so that you can re-verify their status. Front office staff should be trained to take these questionnaires, and once they're reviewed, they should know who to forward those to. So if it's the homeless liaison at the LEA level or the homeless liaison at the school level, they should know who that point of contact is, so that that information can be immediately handed down to the right person, and they can begin reaching out to those families for those supports and resources. Again, it's very important that everyone knows who to contact. I can't say that enough. A lot of times when we're talking with schools, they don't know who that person is, who that main contact is. So it's super important. You want to make sure the questionnaire is translated in frequently used languages in your LEA. That also will help with identification of your homeless students. Again, the housing questionnaire can be found in ePlan, TDOE resources. There is no sign-in required to access these resources, and then they're really easy to use and tailor. As you can see on here, everything in red is what you'll need to do to insert your LEA information. Again, the department does not mind if you use these documents that we've provided, but you do have to put it on LEA letterhead and not keep it on the TDOE letterhead. Again, if you only want to do 2 pages of what we have in there, you can just use the 2 pages. It doesn't have to be all of what we have provided. Again, it's just the best practice to have something in place. So again, you want to make sure that people are familiar with your common signs of homelessness. And it might sound like an easy thing, but a lot of the times when you're a teacher, you might see these behaviors and you think maybe it's just a behavior because the student is just a problem student. And really, it may be more than just that. It may be that they might have a homeless situation. You know, they might be fatigued, and so that fatigue is causing them to probably act out and have behaviors they normally wouldn't have. They may be sleeping in class. Again, they may have poor hygiene. Due to the poor hygiene, they may not be coming to class because they feel uncomfortable not being in clean clothes, or maybe they just are too hungry to be able to come to school. Again, so you got to look at your teacher has to understand that not necessarily bad behavior is not necessarily due to just being a bad student or a troublemaker. There's probably some underlying issues, especially if they're homeless. Again, it's important to remember that all families and student situations are different, and McKinney-Vento eligibility is based on a case-by-case situation. So while Ed has set guidance, every case is different and every situation is different. You got to go back and look at that definition: fixed, regular, adequate, and then base it off of the case scenario. Again, not every two situations are going to be the same. And if you ever have questions about that, that's what I'm here for, to help you walk through those scenarios and help you determine if the student might be eligible for services. McKinney-Vento students, including unaccompanied youth, is important because identification is a crucial first step to ensuring that they're getting these supports and resources. If they don't know about the services, or they don't know that you guys are out there to help them, then they aren't getting these supports. They aren't getting the resources. They're not getting all the needed things they need, maybe to go to higher secondary education. You know, a lot of them have aspirations of going to college, but if they aren't aware that there are people to assist them with the FAFSA, there are people there in your LEA to help them with all of those things, housing situations, then they will be more likely not to want to reach out and find those services. And again, most importantly, it's important that schools remove the barriers, and you want to make sure that you improve the identification of homeless students. And so, again, removing the barriers, making sure that when they come in and they don't have their birth certificate, maybe they don't have their social security card, maybe they're unaccompanied homeless youth and they don't have a parent to sign them in. Your front office staff need to know that all of those barriers should be removed and those students should be immediately enrolled. Again, I get a lot of calls from families that get that pushback about not having a birth certificate or not having these required documentations. And under the federal law, that is a barrier and it must be removed. So youth may avoid identifying themselves as homeless due to, again, lack of understanding what the definition is. We work in the field and we understand McKinney-Vento, and it's still confusing for us. And so putting yourself in the unaccompanied homeless youth situation, maybe they don't understand what that means. Of course, then they want to avoid the stigma of associating with homelessness. And so you want to make sure that you're not using the word homeless, a homeless student. You may be a student in transition. That way, maybe they won't feel like that has a stigma on them. Also, it's very, when you're talking to an adult, it might be uncomfortable to discuss your circumstances. Often it's very personal and sensitive, and they don't want to share that maybe they had a family abuse or anything like that. And so that's a hard way. It's hard for them to be able to like open up to someone. Again, you also want to remember that a fear of being treated differently by school personnel and other students if they're found out. Of course, again, back to being homeless, it's a big stigma and a lot for a student to carry. And of course, the most, probably the biggest fear is being reported to child welfare or law enforcement, because no family member wants their children to be taken away, or fear of them getting taken away because they don't have a home. Circumstances, you should let your homeless liaison know. Make sure your teachers know. Again, I can't stress enough. Make sure your teachers know who your homeless liaison is or who your point of contact is at the school level. You want to ensure that you're offering support without the judgment. And like a lot of you know, relationships are key to success in your homeless programming. You want families to be comfortable. You want to be mindful of, again, not using that word homeless. Be mindful of the housing needs, and know that those things can change quickly. So maybe they're in a shelter one night and the next night they're at someone's house, but then they have to go back to the shelter for the third night. You want to make sure that, again, homelessness changes quickly, and maybe by the end of the school year, they've been housed. And so you want to re-verify and ensure that families know about their rights and about renewing, re-verifying every year. And all the information, again, your posters, you want to make sure that you have your local liaison and your materials out there so that families can see them without even having to talk with anybody. You want to make sure that your teachers and your staff are listening and looking for clues from students. Did the student mention that they are sleeping in different places? Are they wearing the same clothes every day? Are they telling you their home doesn't have electricity or running water? Are there too many people living in an apartment? So while we know a lot of apartments, maybe they're 2 or 3 bedroom and you've got like 10 or 12 people, that would not be adequate living. And so you want to make sure that your house or your apartment is adequate living if you have multiple large families living in a 1-bedroom hotel. That's not adequate. So let's look at unaccompanied homeless youth. I know you guys have seen this chart before. It is in at the National Center for Homeless Education website. You can get that information. And so the term unaccompanied youth includes youth not in the physical custody of a parent or guardian. Guardianship issue alone without homelessness does not convey McKinney-Vento eligibility. Again, this is tricky, and if you have questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. I'm here to talk through scenarios with you. So for the next 2 slides, I've provided a couple of McKinney-Vento eligibility scenarios. For scenario 1, the student's living arrangement. 1 meets the McKinney-Vento definition of homeless, does not have fixed, regular, or adequate housing, and 2, the student is not in the physical custody of a parent or guardian. So therefore, the unaccompanied homeless youth or child is McKinney-Vento eligible. So for scenario 2, first, the student's living arrangement does not meet the McKinney-Vento definition of homeless. So this means he or she has fixed, regular, and adequate housing. However, the student is an unaccompanied youth. Because unaccompanied youth does not meet the definition of homeless, the child or youth would not be McKinney-Vento eligible. So which, you can drop in the chat box, which of the following would you consider homeless? A youth moved in with a friend's family when his parents kicked him out of their home. The friend's parent said that he could only stay for a week. And then B, a youth has lived with her grandmother ever since her mother was incarcerated 2 years ago. The grandmother intends to allow the youth to remain with her until her mother is released from prison. Do you think that scenario B would be unaccompanied youth, scenario A, or do you think both would be unaccompanied homeless youth? Drop your answers in the chat. We have an A. Yes. A would be unaccompanied homeless youth. So the youth in example A would be considered eligible as an unaccompanied homeless youth because he was kicked out of his home and his current living situation is just temporary. And Michelle has a good point. B, only if the grandmother is living in that homeless situation or the housing is inadequate. Very good point, Michelle. The student would, for B, would not be McKinney-Vento eligible unless that grandparent becomes homeless or the situation is not adequate. So let's look at education rights and supports for your homeless students. Again, schools must treat information about homeless children and youth as their educational record and is covered by FERPA. LEAs must obtain prior written consent from the parent or eligible student in order to disclose any information about a student's educational record. So enrollment is an essential factor in the education rights of homeless children and youth. Students experiencing homelessness are entitled to, again, immediate school enrollment, even if lacking records normally required for enrollment. Again, academic records, immunization records, health records, proof of residency, guardianship, any of those documentations that are missing, application or enrollment deadlines that have been missed. Again, we get a lot of families reach out that say that they've had some pushback on that. It cannot be a barrier. It must be removed. Enrollment staff must know that and be aware of these policies and procedures, including, again, I can't stress it enough, who to contact when there is a situation, an issue with identifying a homeless student. Enrollment is defined as attending classes and participating in school activities fully. This means making sure the student is arriving to school on time, making sure that you're getting the needed services to support their academic needs, and making sure that they are able to participate in extracurricular activities such as tutoring, cheerleading, football. All that is participating fully in school. Liaisons are required to help families with obtaining needed documents. So this means working with the family to set up appointments, maybe taking the student to the appointment, getting someone to come to the school. Maybe you have your community health partners that can come out to the school and give immunizations, working with your community-based organizations to meet these needs. Again, you can't always have the parent take the student. Maybe they don't have a vehicle. Maybe they don't have the time because they work full-time. They just can't make it to take the student to the appointment. And so really working with those families and those unaccompanied homeless youth to get these services maybe brought to them, or you take them to the services. Again, schools cannot deny enrollment due to any student who cannot produce normally required documentation. Okay, let's talk about the school selection. Students experiencing homelessness may attend either the school of origin, which is the school, the child, or youth. Oh, sorry, guys. I'm having trouble with the slide deck today. Students experiencing homelessness may attend either their school of origin, which is the school the child or youth attended when permanently housed, or the school in which the child or youth was last enrolled. The local attendance area school is the school in which the public school that non-homeless students attend are living in that same local location have the right to attend. So we have a question in the chat box about the policy regarding paying for physicals associated with participating in school activities. So yes, McKinney-Vento funds can be used, ARP homeless funds can be used to pay for the physicals for these students so they can have those documentations needed to be able to attend or to participate in extracurricular activities. There is no federal law for time or distance limited or time or distance limit placed on a school of origin transportation. However, under Tennessee Code Annotated, there is no student shall be allowed to remain in transit from school more than an hour and a half in the morning and again in the afternoon home. And so a student, if you have a student who is going to be on the school bus for more than an hour and a half, that obviously will not be allowable under the Tennessee Code Annotated, and you'll have to have a best interest determination meeting for that. But students may continue attending the school of origin the entire time they are homeless, even if they move into permanent housing and simply end of the school year. While a student has a right to stay in the school of origin, it may not be in the student's best interest. Again, like I just mentioned, you would have a best interest determination meeting, and your reasoning for holding that bid meeting would be maybe that the student was continuing late to school, there was poor attendance, maybe the district wasn't allowing for the student to participate fully by joining extracurricular activities. And so you really want to look at all of the best factors for these students and keeping them in the school of origin versus your local, but sometimes it is in the best interest for them not to go to the school of origin. interest determination. LEAs must provide the transportation for McKinney-Vento students, transportation to and from the school of origin that's comparable to what is provided to other students in the LEA. So for example, if LEA runs a preschool, but the LEA does not provide bus transportation to any of the students, then the LEA does not have to provide transportation to the family. However, the LEA can offer to pay for gas reimbursement to and from the school, but it's not required. If the LEA doesn't have a bus route, but the means of transportation for that particular LEA is the parents drop them off, the children ride their bikes to school, then the LEA would have to reimburse the parent for gas reimbursement. If the parent doesn't have a vehicle, then the LEA must provide another form of transportation. Maybe it might be that a staff member picks the student up. Maybe it might be that if the LEA has a school bus or a school van that is used for transportation purposes, but transportation must be provided to your McKinney-Vento students. LEAs must transport homeless students to and from the school of origin and at a parent's request or the local liaison's request for unaccompanied homeless youth. Again, it's important that when you're talking to these families, they do understand they have transportation rights. A lot of times families are unaware that they can get transportation, and so it's very important that you provide that information to your families. If the child or youth lives and attends the school within the same LEA, the LEA must provide or arrange the transportation. When a student's school of origin is different from the local attendance area school, the LEAs must agree on how to split the responsibility and cost of transportation. So you want to share them equally so that you're making sure that there is no delay in getting that student transported to their school. So when you're making the best interest determination in accordance with the statute, you want to presume that remaining in the school of origin is in the best interest, considering the impact of mobility on the achievement, education, health, and safety. Again, also, those students have made that connection. If you have your teachers out there identifying those students and making those connections with those students, to maybe move a child away from that connection, that safety net they have there at the school may not be in the best interest of that student. If a school, parent, guardian, unaccompanied youth disagrees with the best interest determination, you need to initiate the LEA's dispute resolution process. Again, under the federal law, LEAs must have a dispute process when a family does not agree with the bid meeting. Transportation is not a disputable matter under McKinney-Vento. So let's take a minute to look at effective practices and collaborations. Again, you want to collaborate with your teachers and your staff there, because they're the ones who are working with your students every day. They're the ones who are seeing what's happening in the classrooms. And so collaborating effectively with your students, with other homeless liaisons. You want to make sure that your students are getting referred to academic services such as tutoring, interventions, wraparound support. If your teachers and your staff don't know about those services, so they don't know to send those children to those services. Again, they have to know that McKinney-Vento offers those, and so they might say, well, this student can't afford tutoring, or this person can't afford football. But if they know that McKinney-Vento has those services available to those students, then they can help encourage those children to participate. They want to make sure you're suggesting and encouraging participation in extracurricular activities. Again, it's proven that students who participate in extracurricular activities do better in school. They learn to socialize and do teamwork. And you want to collaborate with your community and with your families. If your teachers know about your McKinney-Vento programming, then while they're out and about in their community, they can, you know what, the homeless program at my school would definitely benefit from this, or, you know, like, this is a great resource for me to give to my homeless liaison. So the more staff that you're collaborating with and letting them know about the services that are available, the more efficient you'll be identifying and be able to have those supports and resources and good collaboration within the community. Again, you want to ensure that out-of-class assignments contain realistic expectations. If an assignment requires a computer or project supplies and the student doesn't have access to those, again, like I said earlier, you're setting that student up for failure. And so you got to make sure those teachers are aware that some of these students may not have access to all the needed supplies. Again, you want to make sure that you partner with community agencies and businesses. And while your homeless liaisons know that, maybe your teachers aren't, maybe they have that connection with the food bank or the post-secondary institutions, your nonprofits, your public libraries. Again, the more you can get the word out there to your staff, your teachers, families, the more resources and supports you'll have for your homeless programming. Again, you want to create support teams for your students. You want to have maybe mentors or advocates who can meet regularly with those children or those students to discuss issues, needs, and concerns. And also look at reasons to celebrate. While they're maybe homeless and their celebrations are few and far between, some small victories that they may have accomplished would be a great reason to celebrate. And to have that special teacher or that special person celebrate that with them would be a very, very great feeling for that particular student. Again, training that staff and personnel about McKinney-Vento and supporting the students is I can't stress it enough that everyone needs to know about McKinney-Vento programming. At the LEA level, you want to make sure that your federal programs department is working together, your family resource center, your social workers, school nutrition, all those people need to know about McKinney-Vento. Transportation department, I know a lot of you are very familiar with your transportation department, as it is a very high need, demand, and so hopefully all of you have good relationships with them. At the school level, again, school staff, administrators, enrollment staff, your school counselors, school nurses, anyone that you can think of that works daily with your children needs to know about your programming and collaborate together. So again, it's important to remember that every family and circumstances is different. And that the McKinney-Vento Act requires liaisons to make sure that students are getting the same free public education provided to all students. And you have to remember to remove those barriers. Again, homeless liaisons, you know this, but do your school staff know this? Do your front office staff know this? Do your teachers know this? Do your teachers know that a student can't go on a field trip just because they're truant? If they're McKinney-Vento, then they most certainly can go on a field trip. So you make sure that all your staff are aware. I can't stress that enough. I come back every time we have a meeting about posters. It's extremely important that you have this information out and then it's up to date. Again, as we're doing monitoring in the schools, it continues to be where we see that these posters are up, but they are not in a common area, or there's not the information for contact on there. So it will be a federal finding if your school does not have these posters, and all schools must have them in a common place for these parents and students to be able to find that information. Again, you want to have your information in brochures. You want to make sure that you have that available, so maybe a family doesn't feel comfortable immediately talking with you or a teacher, they can have that brochure to offer to a student or a family member. Websites and handbooks, I mentioned that. The more information you can put out there for your families, maybe including the name and contact of your homeless liaison, the definition of homeless, and maybe their rights and services, that you offer transportation. Again, in reviewing LEA's website, it's very, sometimes I don't find any McKinney-Vento information. Sometimes I find very little information, a couple of sentences. And so really look at making sure that website and your handbook have that information. And as always, I have resources for you after this call. NCHE has a great website, and they are currently updating their website to make it a little bit user-friendly. That should be rolling out soon. ePlan, as usual, TWE Resources has a lot of great information. The toolkit is in there for you. And then, of course, there's always resources or information from the U.S. Department of Education, and the non-regulatory guidance that also helps answer any of your McKinney-Vento programming questions. So I know I've covered a lot. Do we have any questions? If you do, you can unmute your line, or you can drop anything in the chat box. Our next quarterly call will be on schedule, and I do apologize that the November one got moved to today's date. Yes, I will send the slide deck out to everyone, and then once it is ready in YouTube, I will also send the link out to the recording. Again, please take a few minutes to share your feedback and let us know how we're doing at the department. And then I will also be presenting at the East Tennessee Conference next week. So if you are there, please come visit me or attend my presentation there, or come meet me in person. I'd love to meet some of you in person. Yes, Alan, there is the quarterly call and TDO resources that you can find the date. And again, I do apologize if this one was a last minute switch, but please feel free to reach out if you have any questions, you need a thought partner. Next week will also be on identification. It might be a little bit different, but we're really going to be looking again at identification. If you have any suggestions on what I need to add to the slide deck for next week, please drop it in the survey. I will definitely look at those and take any information and add that to the slides if you feel it is something that I need to be talking about. Bryn has dropped the quarterly call schedule here in the chat. Again, thank you so much again for joining me. I look forward to seeing you at the office hours and the next quarterly call. And please don't hesitate to reach out with any questions or concerns that you may have. Y'all have a great day.